Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. Emily stared at the files on her screen in disbelief. How had she not seen it before? For years, she had monitored her employer's dark web activity, ensuring their online operations ran smoothly. But now, hidden among innocuous data, were documents exposing deception on a massive scale. The tech giant she worked for, Anthropic, had positioned itself as a champion of ethics and transparency. But these files told a different story. They detailed systematic sabotage of rival startups, infiltration of competitors, and manipulation of public opinion through fake social media accounts. Emily scrolled further, feeling slightly sick. There were records of bribery, blackmail, and even evidence some rivals had been driven to bankruptcy, or worse. Anthropic cultivated an image of bettering humanity through technology. But the reality was a ruthless pursuit of power and profits at any cost. Emily thought of the inspiring mission statements she had helped craft, now feeling like a sham. How could she have been so blind? She knew she had to get this information to the authorities. But who could she trust within the system? Anthropic had influence everywhere. Taking a deep breath, Emily copied the incriminating files to an encrypted drive, erasing her tracks. She couldn't report it through normal channels. That much was clear. But there had to be others who would want to expose the truth. That evening, Emily went to her local cafe, hoping a change of scenery might spark an idea. As she sipped her coffee, she overheard a conversation at the next table that caught her attention. A man was discussing his latest story, investigating corruption in local government. "There's always more to uncover if you're willing to dig deep enough," he said confidently. Something about his determination resonated with Emily. On a hunch, she approached his table. "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. My name is Emily. I work in data security. I think I may have uncovered something that could help with one of your stories." The man eyed her warily. "I'm Adam. What do you have?" Emily hesitated, then decided to take a chance. In a hushed voice, she outlined what she had found about Anthropic's deceptive practices. Adam listened intently, surprise and interest playing across his face. "This could be huge. Mind if I take a look at your evidence?" Emily agreed. But only if they met somewhere more private to ensure no one saw the sensitive files. The next day, in a secluded area of a nearby park, Emily showed Adam the documents on her encrypted drive. His eyes widened as he scrolled. "These are dynamite. With proof like this, we could blow the lid off corporate corruption. I'll start digging into Anthropic right away." Emily felt a surge of hope. Finally, someone who could help expose the truth. But as she and Adam discussed their next steps, Emily noticed a man watching them from a distance. He turned away when she caught his eye. An uneasy feeling crept over her. Had Anthropic already discovered her trail? She hoped her instincts were wrong, but things had just gotten much more dangerous. Adam's investigation into Anthropic was moving quickly. Within a week, he had uncovered evidence corroborating Emily's findings and more. But as they dug deeper, strange things started happening. Emily's computer was hacked, though nothing seemed to be taken. Her apartment was broken into, but again nothing obvious was stolen. She began to feel like she was being watched. When she mentioned it to Adam, he admitted similar small incidents had occurred to him as well. It seemed their actions were attracting unwanted attention. But from who? Anthropic, the government, or someone even more shadowy? They decided it was best to be cautious and limit contact to encrypted calls and meetings in public places. One evening, Emily was working late at her office when she heard a noise outside. Grabbing her things, she hurried out and froze. A dark van was parked down the hall, engine running. As she watched, a hooded figure slipped from the passenger seat holding a pistol with a silencer attached. Emily's heart pounded. She backed away slowly, then turned and ran. Racing down the stairs, she heard footsteps behind her, closing in. She burst through the exit and kept sprinting, dodging between buildings. Her pursuer remained stubbornly on her trail. Darting into an alley, Emily scrambled over a fence. She dropped and rolled, coming up in a crouch behind a dumpster. Her stalker leapt the fence moments later and stalked past, scanning for her. As he moved away, Emily crept in the opposite direction. She made it to her car, speeding off and taking random turns to lose any tail. Her mind raced. Someone was clearly trying to eliminate her as a threat. But who had sent them? And were they after Adam too? That night, Emily met Adam at a crowded boardwalk, recounting what happened. He listened gravely. It seems our investigation has attracted some unwanted attention. We need to be more careful. Over the next few days, strange things continued to occur. Adam's car was vandalized. A package was delivered to his home containing an ominous note. They were definitely being watched and targeted now. Someone was trying to scare them off the story or silence them for good. Emily used her skills to sweep for bugs and trackers, finding several on both her and Adam's devices and vehicles. Whoever was after them had serious resources. They decided the only option was to push harder on uncovering the full truth before it was too late. That weekend, Emily and Adam met in a secluded area, going over the evidence again, looking for missing pieces. As they worked, Emily noticed movement in the trees. A dark figure emerged holding a suppressed pistol. "Adam, get down!" she shouted, tackling him just as a shot rang out. They scrambled for cover as more shots peppered the ground. A van screeched up and men jumped out firing. Emily and Adam returned fire with their own weapons, pinning the attackers behind their vehicle. Sirens sounded in the distance, having been alerted by the gunshots. The men retreated, escaping in their van before help arrived. Shaken but unharmed, Emily and Adam packed up quickly. It was clear now they were targets and wouldn't be safe until the truth came out. They had to unravel the deception at its source before the shadows closed in for good. Emily and Adam went off the grid, holing up in a remote cabin as they analyzed their findings. Whoever was after them clearly wanted this story buried. But they were determined to expose the corruption at Anthropic's core before going deeper underground. Poring over records and documents late into the night, they finally found a lead that tied it all together. Anthropic CEO Daniel Soto had been embezzling funds and falsifying reports for years. His lavish lifestyle and properties were paid for through illegal activities disguised as business expenses. But it went further. Soto had been blackmailing politicians and sabotaging legislation, threatening Anthropic's monopolistic control. The company's entire success was built on a foundation of deception and manipulation. Emily and Adam now had the smoking gun they needed. The next morning, they drove to the city and met with contacts at several major news outlets. Adam presented the evidence, laying it all out in damning detail. The journalists were stunned, realizing this story could shake the tech world. Within hours, articles started publishing online. Emily and Adam watched from a distance as the revelations spread like wildfire. Protests erupted outside Anthropic headquarters, demanding answers. Share prices plummeted as investors abandoned the sinking ship. But they weren't out of danger yet. That night at the cabin, headlights pulled up outside. Men burst through the door firing. Emily and Adam returned fire from cover, wounding one attacker as the others retreated. They had clearly been tracked to their bolt hole. Dawn was breaking as Emily packed their things. "We need to end this. Now." "Soto can't be allowed to cover this up," Adam agreed, and they drove to confront Anthropic's CEO directly, weapons concealed for protection. At Anthropic HQ, security was in chaos from the scandal. Emily and Adam bluffed their way past the distracted guards with fake IDs. They made their way to Soto's top-floor office, bursting through the door. Soto sat behind his desk, composure finally cracking under the pressure. "What do you want?" he spat. "The truth to come out," Emily replied calmly. "You're finished here." Soto lunged for a hidden pistol, but Adam tackled him, wrestling it away. Suddenly, glass shattered behind them. A figure emerged through the smoke, leveling an Uzi. The assassin had found them at last. Emily drew and returned fire as Adam dragged Soto down. Tracer rounds lit the room, shattering furniture. Emily charged forward, diving behind an armchair. She leaned out, firing controlled double taps. Within seconds, the assassin jerked and fell, riddled with bullet holes. It was over. The police arrived moments later, responding to the gunfire. Soto was arrested along with several corrupt executives as Emily and Adam's story was cemented as truth. Justice had been served, though at great personal cost. As sirens faded into the distance, a new day was dawning for the tech world. The darkness had been brought into the light at last. The drive to the cabin had been a quiet one, the dense woods casting long shadows over our old Ford as we navigated the narrow, winding roads. I, Alex, had always had a fascination with the obscure and the macabre, which is what led me to the dark web and, subsequently, to the game that would change everything. My friends, Jamie, Taylor, Marcus, and Lena, were a mix of skeptical and curious when I first mentioned the weekend retreat. Jamie, with her vibrant red hair and piercing green eyes, was the most adventurous of the group, always up for a challenge. Taylor, the group's thinker, stroked his neatly trimmed beard in contemplation whenever something intrigued him. Marcus, the skeptic, always had a frown on his face, his skepticism a shield he wore proudly. Lena, the peacemaker, was the glue that held us together, her warm smile and soothing voice a balm in our often heated debates. The cabin, nestled deep in the woods, was rustic and isolated, perfect for a weekend getaway from technology and the bustle of city life. The wooden structure, with its creaking floors and musty smell, felt like a step back in time. We spent the first evening settling in, unpacking our things, and preparing a hearty meal in the quaint kitchen. The mood was light, filled with laughter and stories, a stark contrast to what was to come. As the night progressed, I revealed my true intention for the weekend, a game I had discovered on the dark web. It was rumored to blur the lines between reality and the digital world, a concept that fascinated me to no end. The game was simple. Complete a series of tasks and uncover the truth behind the game. My friends' reactions were a mix of intrigue and skepticism. "Why the dark web, Alex? You know that place is crawling with creeps," Marcus said, his voice laced with doubt. "It's just a game, Marcus." "What could possibly go wrong?" Jamie chimed in, her adventurous spirit shining through. I led them to the living room, where an old, dusty briefcase sat on the coffee table. It was adorned with a unique lock, something out of a spy movie. I explained that I had found it in the cabin upon our arrival and believed it was part of the game. Lena, ever the voice of reason, voiced her concerns. "This feels weird. Alex, are you sure we should be doing this?" But the allure of the unknown was too strong. We gathered around the briefcase, the atmosphere tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As I reached for the lock, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something unimaginable. The briefcase clicked open, revealing its contents. Old photographs, newspaper clippings, and a series of cryptic notes. The first photograph sent a wave of shock through us. It was a picture of Jamie, taken years ago, a moment she had shared with no one. "How is this possible?" Taylor whispered, his usual composure shaken. The realization hit us like a ton of bricks. This was no ordinary game. We were part of something much bigger, something that defied explanation. As we delved deeper into the contents of the briefcase, the cabin's isolation felt more menacing than comforting. The night outside grew darker, the woods seemingly closing in on us. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" Lena murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I had no answer for her. All I knew was that the game had just begun, and there was no turning back. The dim light of the cabin cast long shadows on the walls. As the realization of our predicament sank in, the air grew thick with tension after the discovery of the photographs. Jamie's hands trembled as she picked up a photo of herself, her face pale. This was taken on my solo trip to the Rockies. I never shared these pictures with anyone. Marcus, ever the skeptic, tried to rationalize it. It's got to be a sick joke. Alex, you're taking this game too far. I shook my head vehemently, my own confusion mirroring theirs. I swear, I didn't do this. I thought the game was just a myth. As we sifted through the contents of the briefcase, the eerie silence of the forest seemed to press against the windows. Every creak of the cabin sent shivers down our spines. Lena, usually the calmest among us, was visibly shaken, her eyes darting around the room. We should leave, now. But leaving wasn't an option. Our phones, which had been working just hours earlier, were now mysteriously out of service. The cabin, once a refuge, had become a prison. The game's next task appeared on my laptop screen with an ominous ding. The message was chilling. Go to the basement. Your past awaits. Taylor, the voice of reason, protested. We can't do this. It's playing with our lives. But the choice wasn't ours to make. An unseen force was driving us, manipulating us like puppets. We gathered our courage and descended the creaking wooden stairs to the basement. The air was musty, the only light coming from a flickering bulb. There, we found a wall covered in newspaper clippings, photos, and notes, all about us. Dates, places we'd been, people we'd met. It was as if someone had been stalking us for years. The realization hit us like a ton of bricks. This was no game. We were part of someone else's twisted plan. Lena's voice broke the silence. Who would do this to us? Why? We had no answers, only a growing sense of dread. The game, the cabin, the briefcase. It was all connected, part of a macabre tapestry that we were now entangled in. That night, as we huddled together in the living room, the sound of something moving outside jolted us awake. Peering through the window, we saw nothing but the dense forest. But the feeling of being watched was unmistakable. As dawn broke, the game's true nature revealed itself. It wasn't just a test of bravery or curiosity. It was a test of our sanity, our will to survive. And as we prepared for the next task, we knew that the worst was yet to come. The pale light of dawn filtered through the cabin windows, casting a ghostly glow as we faced our grim reality. The terror of the night had left its mark on us, our faces etched with fatigue and fear. Taylor's analytical mind had given way to despair, his eyes hollow. Lena's hands shook uncontrollably, the peacemaker of our group crumbling under the weight of our situation. Marcus, always skeptical, now harbored a look of defeat. Jamie, the most fearless among us, had a steely resolve in her eyes, but her voice betrayed her terror. It's like we're in a sick game, she whispered, her voice quivering. I knew what I had to do. The only way to end this nightmare was to confront the creator of the game. I opened my laptop, the only link to the outside world, and accessed the DarkWeb. The eerie glow of the screen illuminated my determined face as I typed a message to the shadowy figure behind this twisted game. Why are you doing this to us? I typed, my fingers trembling. The reply was immediate and chilling. A cold fury rose within me. This person, this monster, was playing with our lives as if we were nothing but pawns in their sick game. I formulated a plan, my mind racing with possibilities. If this game was about pushing limits, I would push back. The next task arrived, more sinister than anything we had faced before. One of you must be sacrificed, the screen read. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. We looked at each other, the reality of our situation sinking in. We were not just fighting for our sanity. We were fighting for our lives. But I had a plan. Using the game's own rules against it, I devised a ruse. I announced that I would be the sacrifice, much to the horror of my friends. But as the creator watched through the cabin's hidden cameras, I staged my own death, using tricks and illusions learned from my fascination with the dark web. The creator, believing I had fallen into their trap, revealed their location through a careless message. With renewed hope and adrenaline surging through my veins, I led my friends in a desperate final confrontation. The battle was brutal, each of us fighting with everything we had. In the end, we emerged victorious, the creator's identity remaining a mystery as they escaped into the shadows of the web. We stumbled out of the cabin, the fresh air feeling like a balm to our tortured souls. The sun was rising, casting its light on a new day, a symbol of our hard-won freedom. But the trauma of our experience lingered. A haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked in the unseen corners of the world. As we drove away from the cabin, the events of the past few days replayed in my mind. We had survived, but at what cost? The game was over, but the questions remained unanswered. The identity of the creator, a mystery that would haunt us forever. Thomas scrolled through the leaked documents, his mind reeling. Years of analyzing intelligence had long since stripped away any innocence, leaving only a hardened cynicism. But this was something else entirely. The files exposed a spider's web of influence, stretching across political systems worldwide. Manipulated by a shadowy group with motives unclear, Thomas recognized some of the players, wealthy donors and lobbyists who'd wined and dined politicians for favors. But the full scope of their control was chilling. A message pinged on his screen. "What do you make of it?" Thomas started, glancing around his sparse apartment. Only one person could be contacting him like this. On an encrypted channel within the dark website, he typed carefully. "This is big. Bigger than anything I've seen. Who are these people really?" A pause then. "That's what I'm trying to find out. I have my suspicions, but no proof. Yet." Thomas considered. For years, he'd watched helplessly as his intelligence was twisted to serve agendas beyond oversight. If these leaks could be a chance to set things right. "I want to help. I have access that could trace things further." Another pause. "Why should I trust a spook?" Thomas sighed. "Because I'm tired. Tired of the lies. If this group is what I think, a lot of people are in danger without even knowing it. Let me help you uncover the truth." A long silence followed before the response came. "Fine. But you'll have to earn my trust every step of the way, and the first step is meeting in person." Thomas agreed, and coordinates flashed on his screen for an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. As he drove through the darkening streets, a light rain began to fall. Pulling up to the decrepit building, Thomas switched off the engine and listened to the patter of droplets on the roof. After several minutes, a figure emerged from the shadows. Sarah was younger than expected, with wary eyes that missed little. "You came alone?" she asked. Thomas nodded. Satisfied, Sarah handed him a thumb drive. "Everything I've found so far. But it's not enough. We need to follow the money trail back to its source. Are you really willing to go that far?" Thomas inserted the drive into his laptop. Pages of documents and notes spilled onto the screen. Pieces of a greater puzzle. He looked up at Sarah. "I am. These people can't be allowed to continue like this." She considered him for a long moment before speaking. "All right." And so began their dangerous search for the truth. Thomas pored over the new files Sarah had provided, searching for connections. For days, they traced shell companies and lobby groups, mapping the spider's web of influence. It led from Washington to Brussels to Beijing, tentacles wrapped around decision, makers in every capital. The scale of control was staggering, But who truly pulled the strings? A photo caught Thomas's eye, a familiar face smiling with a senator. He zoomed in on the caption, "Businessman Charles Wellington with Senator James at fundraising gala." Charles Wellington, billionaire owner of arms manufacturers and resource conglomerates, long suspected of using money to shape policies in his favor. But direct involvement in an organized conspiracy was another thing entirely. Thomas messaged Sarah, "I think I've found our man, billionaire Charles Wellington. He's been photographed with key players and his companies benefit massively from legislation." Sarah replied a few minutes later, "Makes sense. Wellington has the means and motive, but we'll need solid proof before confronting him directly. What's our next move?" Thomas considered their options. Directly hacking Wellington's accounts was too risky, likely to trigger alerts. But there may be a backdoor approach. "I know someone who used to work for one of Wellington's shell companies. If I can get her to talk, she may provide a lead, but we'll need to meet in person for her safety." Sarah was silent a long time before responding. "Okay, set up the meeting and I'll be there. But we proceed carefully from now on. These people have a lot to lose." Thomas agreed and messaged his contact Anna, a former accounting assistant at one of Wellington's offshore firms. She'd left under suspicious circumstances and gone into hiding. After some coaxing, she agreed to meet. That evening, Thomas and Sarah drove to an isolated diner far outside the city. They spotted Anna alone in a booth, eyes darting nervously. "Thank you for coming," Thomas said as they sat down. "We just want to understand what really happened with your job." Anna took a shaky breath. "Look, I don't know what you two are into, but I saw things there I shouldn't. Funny money, fake invoices. I started asking questions and next thing I know, threats were coming." She slid a memory stick across the table. "That's all the files I copied, thinking they might help if anything happened to me. Take it and leave me alone, please." Thomas pocketed the stick, exchanging a glance with Sarah. They thanked Anna and left quickly, sensing her fear. Back in the car, he inserted the stick into his laptop. Endless documents spilled onto the screen. Bank statements, emails, photos of meetings with politicians from around the world. A money trail stretching back years, with Charles Wellington's fingerprints all over it. But one file stood out, a schedule for an upcoming private gathering at Wellington's remote estate. If they could infiltrate that event, all their remaining questions may be answered. Thomas turned to Sarah, her eyes lit with the same realization. This could be it, our chance to get the proof we need. Are you ready to take a risk? She met his gaze steadily. "I'm ready. Let's find out what these people are really up to." Thomas and Sarah spent the next day carefully planning their infiltration of Wellington's gathering. Under cover of night, they drove to the estate's remote forest location. Scaling the high fence was tricky in the darkness, but they dropped down unseen on the other side. Lights glowed in the distance through towering trees as they crept closer. Peering through binoculars, Thomas spotted over a dozen luxury vehicles parked outside the mansion. Men in expensive suits mingled with politicians on the veranda, champagne flutes glinting in the lamplight. "This is it," he whispered to Sarah. "All the major players in one place. We just need to get close enough to record their discussions." They circled around, looking for an opening. The mansion was heavily secured, but a side door stood ajar near the kitchen entrance. Thomas gestured, and they slipped inside. Voices echoed down the hall as Thomas and Sarah hugged the wall. Making their way toward the gathering, a side room came into view, dimly lit. They paused at the cracked door. Inside, Charles Wellington stood before a group of suited men and politicians. "Gentlemen, you'll be pleased to know our investments continue generating excellent returns. With your cooperation, we now influence decisions in every sector." Gasps and murmurs of approval followed. Thomas glanced at Sarah, Vindicated but grim, they had their proof at last. Just then, a floorboard creaked behind them. Spinning around, they found 2 security guards blocking the hallway. "Well, well, it seems we have intruders," one guard sneered, reaching for his radio. Thomas lunged, but the second guard grabbed Sarah from behind. She cried out as Thomas struggled with the first. A crackle came from the room. They'd been discovered. "Take them to the cellar until we're finished here," Wellington's voice called out coolly. "We'll deal with them afterward." The guards dragged Thomas and Sarah downstairs despite their resistance. They were thrown into a dark, damp room, and the heavy door bolted behind them. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Sarah spoke quietly. "Thomas, I'm sorry I got us into this, but we can't let them cover this up now." Thomas nodded, already examining the walls for any weakness. "Don't blame yourself. We knew the risks. Now we just have to find a way out of here and get the truth to light, whatever it takes." They searched frantically as muffled voices carried through the door. Suddenly, Thomas found a loose stone and pulled, widening the hole. Dirt crumbled away to reveal an earthen tunnel leading into blackness. Exchanging a glance, they knew this may be their only chance. Thomas went first into the tight space, then helped pull Sarah through. Together in the darkness, they began crawling toward freedom and justice.